Hello and welcome to the Nullker Podcast series. My name is Layla Gulen. Nullker is an organization committed to championing the world's changemakers and innovators who are dedicated to protecting our planet. We come to you from beautiful Brook Green Gardens along the South Carolina coast, a nature preserve and sculpture garden that serves as the perfect backdrop to our interview today. We are delighted to be joined by Weruschca Kirkegaard, co-founder and head of project management for United Designers International. Weruschca, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. Well, please, to let our audience know, share with us about your journey as a designer and when you started adopting a philosophy of being ecologically conscious.
That's a very long and meandering road, but I started out in the world of interior design. I did that for the most part of my life. And then in around 2008, a series of happenings occurred in my life that forced me to reevaluate where I was in my life and where I wanted to go. And I think it was my inner child that was nudging me to get back home because I grew up on a farm and I was always outside. So I was re-attracted back to the ecology and biology and life itself. So I went on an exploration quite late in my life. I was early 40s and discovered that there was also something that was called ecological design. So that's where my journey started.
That's amazing. United Designers International, please tell us a bit more about this organization and why you decided to found it.
Yeah, well, the actual name United Designers International was coined by my business partner, Daniel Halsey, many years ago. And we started working in 2018 quite intensely for 2 years and tried to brainstorm about what was lacking in our field of work. And one of the biggest challenges is that every time that you begin, you have to rake in the team with all their knowledge and skill sets. And we wanted to make that path shorter and more accessible. And also, many of us are independent entrepreneurs, and I think everybody relates when you say you spend a lot of time on the marketing and the sales and communications and not your actual work. So we wanted to create a safe environment where we could represent everybody and share resources and become better.
Yes, indeed. Well, in researching for this interview, two terms that I've come across, it is often regenerative agriculture and ecosystem restoration. Can you please explain to our audience what this means and how you leverage this idea?
Yeah, so regenerative agriculture is a sustainable and holistic approach to farming, actually. Obviously, it's devoid of chemical inputs and GMO. I know it's a sensitive topic, but it is essential. And it is a way of growing food that also strives to raise the carrying capacity of the land, the soil fertility, the water retention of the landscape, while sequestering carbon. And ecosystem restoration is, on the other hand, a more intentional and science-based approach of revitalizing or regenerating depleted or degraded landscapes. So,
very interesting. And can you give us some examples in which these two philosophies have been implemented?
Oh boy. That can go from, we do very small projects from residential, homesteading, self-sufficiency, market gardens, all the way up to very large landscapes for foundations or institutions, where we even have to deal with large-scale watershed restoration or community-involved food forestry, agroforestry. So there are so many facets in this realm.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I was going to ask because it sounds like there are varying scales in which your projects take shape. So from the very smallest to some of the very largest as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we also say, we try to never say no because one of the other pillars of United Designers is also education. So we also give a training and courses actually in ecological design. So the junior designers that come in, we try to get them in on the smaller projects, always under the supervision of a senior, of course, so they can start to get better. And of course, the more professional ones, when we move into engineering, then we have another composition of our teams of the bigger projects.
Yes. Can you share with us where your design concept begins, where your process begins? What are some of the skill sets and approaches that you take to achieve the end result?
Well, not me personally, but everybody in our line of work, I believe site assessment is crucial. And site assessment is gathering all the data of the site where we're working, especially because we're working all around the world. Every time we have to deal with different cultural nuances, different climates, different phases of degradation often also. And depending on budget, on desires and scope, then we get together the best suitable team. We have people that are specialized in LiDAR data, and they generate digital elevation models where we can do simulations of hydrology. But we also have people that are specialists in vegetative systems and seeing what supportive species we need to get in to support an agroforestry program, or holistic management of grazers. So there's tons of facets to what we do.
I think that's fascinating. And when you say that you've worked all around the world, can you share a bit about where you've had some of the biggest challenges in trying to implement these changes?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenges that we always face, or not always, often it is resource restrictions, whether it's budget or available engineering or skill sets or knowledge. We always have to take that into account. And also, especially when dealing in countries with very different cultures, we always try to create a team that fits that possible sensitivity. So it works smoother. And other challenges are also, of course, legislations. There are some ridiculous legislations in place, even in Europe, in regards to earthworks, when we want to do water retention landscapes. So those are also often a big challenge.
Oh, wow. A lot of red tape.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Yes, a lot of red tape.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. You blend a variety of disciplines into your designs: aesthetics, nutrition, health, communications. Can you please explain how all of these come together?
Yeah, again, it's very much depending on the project and the scope. But I have, for instance, I'm working on an estate here now in the Netherlands where the main aim was raising biodiversity and creating a landscape that's more resilient to the climate change, because also in the Netherlands we're experiencing extreme drought and periods of extreme rain. Also here, yeah. So, but also on the side, we had to acknowledge that their main income had to come from education and events and hospitality. So then we're talking with chefs, we're talking with people that are running a market garden, while also designing a more resilient landscape. So, and that's what makes our work so wonderful, in my opinion, that it has so many different aspects.
Indeed. Well, you say that your passion is helping the world, achieve sort of a utopian ideal in terms of becoming one with the environment. So I'm curious how you can share with people to get on board with this philosophy, how they can get behind something that seems rather daunting, that seems a little bit difficult to implement in their everyday lives.
Yeah, so how to get people on board?
Yes.
Yeah, there are so many ways, Leila. First of all, I think that we don't need to emphasize the necessity and the urgency anymore. I think we're well aware. And each to their own is able to do either so little or so much. And I realize that and recognize that. Also that often the costs of making better choices are a reality. However, I think we have to ask ourselves, not doing it, what will that cost be on the long term? And it's a little bit like the saying, do you want to invest in your health now or pay the hospital bills later? It's more or less where we're at the moment. So
yes, so I was going to ask you about affordability, absolutely. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's true, because I think affordability makes people a little bit gun shy when they can only kind of see the first couple of steps ahead of them and not really the mile or 10-mile long view.
No, absolutely. But the thing is, of course, so how affordable is it if we keep on going down this path as business as usual? If we're looking at the state of the world right now with all the effects of climate change, homeowners and insurance companies cannot keep up with all this devastation. So if we compare that bill or that unaffordability towards making better choices, they might be a bit more costly and difficult now. We might have to let some things go, but I don't think there's any discussion on the affordability and making better choices right now. It's better work.
Indeed,
absolutely.
Can you share for just a few of your projects where there was a combination of two or more of the elements that you've spoken about already, just the different philosophies that you kind of assimilate to one another in order to achieve the end result that you're desiring?
I think I just mentioned the one that I talked about here in Holland is a combination, or an example of a combination. We're also currently working in many places, but I'm trying to see which ones are multifaceted. In any case, almost all our communities are often, especially the large-scaled, connected to some form of community involvement. Right now we're doing low-tech erosion control interventions in Hawaii, and we all know what's going on there. So there is a lot of involvement of education on site, training the local community, taking them by the hand. I always like to say we're not colonialists. We don't want to come in somewhere, do our work, and then leave. We want to make sure that we take these people on our journey so that we leave behind proper stewards of the land. And the other example, I'm working now in Ibiza with some colleagues, and there it's a combination of a regenerative farm, but it's also going to be an inspirational site where they want to teach and inspire other farmers and also have events. So there's very often nowadays, unfortunately, many farmers cannot live from just going into the transition of regenerative ag on their own. Very often they have to add either hospitality or bed and breakfasts or events or trainings or courses. But that is the way it is, but it is helping the transition. So,
Weruschca, we had mentioned challenges in the beginning of the interview, and it sounds like it runs the gamut. And in terms of just what presents as the physical challenge, but also culturally speaking. And you've visited many places around the world. So can you talk a little bit about where you've seen maybe those challenges the most, and in what way?
Yeah, well, again, of course, it depends very much on where we are in the world. I think when we work in third world countries, or let me say where the cultures are very different than the Western, especially given India and Africa, you have to consider that even just communicating when we are having stakeholder meetings, the client might mean different things than we are used to when we are talking about projects. They might value different things. They might aim for different values than we do. So we always try to bring in a team member who is either of the same nationality, a belief, or religion even, which is also it can be a sensitive topic sometimes, even to the extent that in some countries we actually form a more male-dominated team because we know it's going to facilitate the project. It's going to make it easier. And in other areas, it is not a problem for myself and my other female colleagues to step on forward, but sometimes we have to take a step back. And I think acknowledging these differences and respecting it gives us a much better chance of starting off
that's fascinating.
Smoothly on these projects.
That is fascinating to hear. I think I've read a couple of stories where also if the people within that country aren't a part of that change, that they also take umbrage over that, because there was, I think, a situation, maybe it was in either Pakistan or in India, where there were a lot of solar panels that were put up in order to help with regenerative electricity and things of that nature, and they were smashed because either they didn't have a stake in having those erected. Also, there's a woman in Pakistan who she came up with this ingenious idea to protect some of the poorest villages from being inundated by water during terrible monsoon rains. But it's interesting to see how maybe some of those ideas are changing a little bit, because folks are seeing that, you know, no matter who it's coming from, a change has to be made.
Oh yeah, for sure. And things are moving and things are changing. But I always feel that within our work, we are ecological designers. It is not our, and I mean, we're all latent activistic, we are. But I don't think it's our part. It's not our role to change or scrutinize any form of belief or religion or culture. Our job is to restore that landscape or provide security, food security, or help with climate adaptation. And one of the most important tools always is, of course, education, and that is no different in our field. Taking people along and educating people is the most powerful instrument, so to understand each other and what we do.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this question. Are many designers following in these footsteps, and how can more people get on board with this idea?
Well, designers, I live next to, I think it's one of the biggest universities, agricultural universities in Europe. And I'm approached almost weekly by young students that want a little Zoom check-in with me. And they are doing majors in agriculture or in climate or in botany. And they want to pick my brain on what we do and how did I arrive to the point where I am. And I always try to make time for these young people, because they are the future. We like to call them rainbow warriors. We need more of these people. But it is still a quite pioneering job that we are doing. It still needs a lot of recognition. Very often you only get that on the larger scale when you involve some kind of engineering title. But yes, there is a change. It could go a little bit faster to my liking. I would like it to move faster, but it is happening, and especially among the young people. They are very aware, and I think, unfortunately, also very afraid for the future. So it's a bad driver, but it is the reality.
Absolutely. And for the layperson watching this who is environmentally conscious, how would you recommend that they implement these ideas into their own everyday lives?
Yeah. I'm going to give you another unpopular reply there, because it is daunting. I understand that for everybody, but there is a very big, let me say, a very impactful thing that we can do every single day that we open up our wallet. We do that. All of us do, and we do it often. First of all, we should probably ask ourselves, do I really need this? And secondly, ask yourself the hard questions. Is this supporting my community, animal welfare, ecology, human welfare, my local community? Or is it contributing to the devastation and the pollution of our world? And it's a tough question, but if I had to train myself for years every time, and if you ask yourself that, then we're already starting to make a massive change. And next to that, if you want to get involved, there is enough initiatives everywhere around the world now that you can support, that you can spread the word.
We live in such a consumer-centric society, and it's all this stuff, and it's just a constant consumerism and creation of chemicals and products and things that we really truly don't need.
Now, there's an interesting discussion I had with some colleagues a while ago. We always tend to say, when you listen to the news, it's like due to climate change. And by choosing exactly that wording, you kind of put it far away beyond your approach, so you can't do much about it. But in essence, what you should actually say, due to overconsumption, then thus and thus and thus, because the rest is a symptom, but the cause is the way we live and the choices we make. And
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. This is my last question for you, Weruschca. What is next for you, and what do you hope to achieve in, say, the next year?
Oh boy. Well, for me, I think I'm a Siamese twin with the work that I do, because I found my passion and I never have to retire. So for me, it's very much related to my work. I hope United Designers International has proven to be a success formula, and it's going very, very well. We're very busy, but we're currently in a little bit of that, the growth tension that we need that next step. So I hope we will be able to attract some funding or some subsidies to go to that next level, so that we can develop more trainings, that we can have more interns and lead more designers towards this work, and provide them with a proper livelihood by choosing this path. So that's very much my aim. Spread the word and be sure that our people can earn a decent living by doing this work.
And one day, maybe we will all be rainbow warriors. Thank you so much, Weruschca, for taking the time to speak with us. And for anyone who would like more information, where can they find you?
We are at uniteddesigners.org.
Beautiful. And please also visit our website, nullker.com. We want to thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.